Welcome to Absolute Scenes, our series of reviewing IMDb's bucket list top 100 films to see before you die. Today we've got Amelie. I don't think the director ever intended us to introduce it that way, but it's tough, mate. It's going to have to be done now.
That was probably the least enjoyable singing I've ever heard done.
It's arguably better than Little Wayne. So many dislikes in this video already. Amelie was directed in 2001 by Jean-Pierre Jeunet and is starring Audrey Tautou, who is famous for some films like The Da Vinci Code with Tom Hanks, a couple of others. Amelie is the tale of a young woman living in France who, through a life of being secluded and mollycoddled, has an active imagination and likes to get herself into a bit of mischief. So we see just through her life as she grows up, she becomes incredibly introverted because of her upbringing. As the story goes on, she finds her calling in trying to help people who aren't necessarily looking for it. Through that, though, she doesn't want to be known for it. She doesn't want any acclaim for it. She's still happily just very quiet and secretive, and she considers herself to be a secret guardian angel throughout the film. It's a love story. In some ways, it's a conventional love story, girl meets boy, but it's also a love story that involves loving yourself and how the characters have that sort of inner conflict, and also just loving your community and loving your friends and doing things off your own back that can help them. So, Mitchell, we're going to start with just a spoiler-free review, and then we'll jump on to our ratings, and then we'll stay on for everyone that has seen it to give our spoiler thoughts, basically. So don't worry, we won't ruin anything if you haven't seen it yet and you're looking at this review to decide, should I watch Amelie? So Mitchell, you watched Amelie. What were your basic thoughts for it?
I'm going to caveat before I start talking that,
okay,
you know, we're in lockdown at the minute. I'm working from home. I'm staring at a laptop screen all day, and then thought I'd relax on an evening, watch Amelie, ready for this discussion, and I had to read it all. I had to read it all off a screen. I've been doing that all day for work, and then you make me read the subtitles on the film. So I was already thinking that there was too much concentration I was going to need for this film. But what did I think of it? I didn't want to watch it to the end, and I know that's going to be terrible because I was telling people I was going to watch this film, and some people then responded and said, "That's my favorite film ever," or "My girlfriend loves that film," and I was struggling to force myself through it. That's what I would say is my headline.
Yeah. What were your impressions before you went into it?
I actually didn't. I didn't know, apart from it being in French, and I've seen the poster many times in lots of places of the main character, but I didn't really know what the story was going to be about. I genuinely didn't know anything about it, so I was interested in a sense of seeing where the story went. Had you seen it before, Dan?
Very similar. Didn't know much about it. This was brought in 2001, so we'd have been like 11 when this came out. Similar to you, I've heard so many people say that this is their favorite film, so no pressure on us reviewing it. And for me, I've always got confused between this and Chocolat, but they both got French names, and I've never had any interest in watching either of them. That being said, obviously, we were getting everything up. I was like, oh, so this is actually in French. It's not just set in France. I'm really not bothered by subtitled movies or foreign films. I'm hard of hearing in 1 year, so I have subtitles on for English speaking shows just so I can hear properly. So that wasn't too much of an issue for me. Going into it, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what it was about, but I liked it. I thought, amidst the confusion of the beginning, when I hadn't grasped entirely what things were, there were little quirky jokes in there which I laughed at. The little fish joke at the very beginning I thought was quite funny to give us an insight of Amelie's mind. And obviously you can see that it is going to be different. The saturation is different at the very beginning, throughout the film. In what it really showing is us that dreamlike quality, that this is really Amelie's point of view, even though she might not be in certain scenes. This is the lens of what Amelie's life is like. And I thought, yeah, it takes a few minutes to sort of get into. There's lots of expositions, about 15 minutes worth of exposition at the beginning, which can be tough. But as it went on, I sort of just found myself going along with it and just being like, okay, just relax, see what it's like. And then the film just started bit by bit winning me over. But I think a lot of that is probably my personality as well. The story itself, I think, starts quite original, but then becomes more and more cliche as it goes on. And yes, the avenues of which they go down are really original, which we'll talk about in our spoiler review. So I was quite content watching it, and by the end, granted, I had nearly a bottle of red wine, which may have helped mellow me out. Yeah, no, I had a really good feeling afterwards. I thought that was a film I'd watch again. Similar to The Kid, maybe I'm not going to stick it on every year. I certainly wouldn't call it one of my favorite films, but I can absolutely see how charming it is. I'm not sure if you got any of, well, you must have by the end, so I don't want to spoil anything just yet, but there is an undertone and a theme to this film, which I think I'd worked out about an hour in. I think the film's just over 2 hours long. And then I think about 15, 20 minutes from the end, one of the characters borderline slams it in the audience face, which I didn't like. Again, we said this last week, just trust us. If someone gets it, we get it. We don't get it, we don't get it. And that's it.
Slammed it in our face so much that I'm missing it, Dan.
Are you still listening? Oh, well, at least I get to talk about it later on. I think some of the dialogue is a bit clunky. Maybe it's because of the French translation, and that actually it wouldn't be anywhere near as clunky in its natural language, and we've just got to have it translated. Because I do feel that with a lot of foreign language films, that I'm thinking this doesn't seem that smooth, but it must just be how the translation comes through. And yeah, I think a lot of people will miss the point in this. I think hopefully the spoiler review and my thoughts towards it might help put a different lens across it into how it could be understood, and in what sort of the thematically what the film is trying to teach us as a lesson, and that might help. But I feel like you need a certain level of empathy towards Amelie, and we know Amelie's an only child and is quite secluded. And I'm an only child. I think that there are certain things that an only child has during an upbringing that lends itself really well to this film, that you immediately just sort of understand.
I mean, I don't think it's a good measure of a film if you need to have been an only child to connect with a character. Because I had a major problem with Amelie of like, just didn't. I don't know. I didn't particularly warm to her, I don't think. And that was even with the little touches of making people's days and doing nice things, and this guardian angel type kind of routine that she was trying to go with to make everyone's everyday life a bit better. I don't know if I really connected with her, and that was even with the touches of when she looks to camera and occasionally she says a few words to the viewer, and I guess she's meant to be connecting with the viewer, but I don't know. I know she's introverted, and you're not getting that full personality through. But I never connected with her and thought, yeah, I want it to really work out for Emily or anything like that. With regards to the saturation point in the coloring, I honestly found that really off-putting. I didn't enjoy it. I know there was touches of the scenes when it was actually a very drab landscape, particularly when you saw the grocer, for example. It was very drab, the scene, and then just the grocery where Amelie was really full of color.
Half the issue there is that the saturation is there to invoke a dreamlike quality, which would make it completely less real. And we can see that through certain scenes where she's watching the TV and the TV is speaking to her, or is narrating. It's like the news about her life or her feelings. So an inner monologue is such where she doesn't quite speak as much. So it's good that it didn't seem real to you, because subconsciously that is something that you've noticed, which I think is exactly what the director wanted. And I think for some of the scenes, the saturation helps. It's particularly with external shots, where there's a scene where she's going to try and find the love interest, and the love interest is trying to find her. She's sort of left a few clues, and that's outside, and it's northern France. It's quite grey, so leaving the saturation on a bit hasn't made it seem overly dreamy. But I think what it has done is help it age well. 20 years old this film is, and I felt some of the shots there, with how they looked aesthetically, I did not feel 20 years old. So I think it's going to help it age well in terms of how it looks. This isn't reality. And the opening 15-minute exposition, particularly with the fish, and even how it relates to some of the incidents that happened, I think are a clear indication to us as this isn't realistic. This isn't an unbiased telling of a woman's story. This is a personal point of view tale from inside the mind of a young woman, and therefore not everything is reliable. So Mitchell, without spoiling anything, did you have anything specific that you did like?
There's no doubt about it. There are some good points to this film, and there are things and elements I enjoyed about it. I said I couldn't connect with Amelie's character too much, but I liked a lot of the support characters, and a lot of the little relationships that were kind of surrounding Amelie's story. So I liked the dynamic in the cafe of the guy with the recorder and the two women that he kind of had the relationship with. Enjoyed some of the quips of the characters, and that kind of funny elements to them. So the woman with the dead husband, I liked, when she had the stuffed dog and she's like, look at how lovingly the dog looks at her master, and it's like stuffed and she's just got it staring at it, and you're like,
Quality.
and there's nice touches, and I like the way they introduced all the characters in that viewpoint of Amelie as a young girl and kind of dreaming, because it was all little inconsequential facts about the people, and I thought that was a kind of cute way to introduce people. This is Amelie. She likes to crack the top of her creme brulee. She likes to skim stones and things. None of them mean anything in themselves, but I think they were nice little pieces of people's personality that it was a nice way to introduce people.
Was there anything else, without going into too much detail, that you didn't like?
Yeah, so some bad points, and I think this all just ties into the whole element and the complete difference of opinion we've got on this film. And I know it's meant to be a dream and it's not very realistic, but there was just some bits that really annoyed me when she was doing the nice deed for the blind man and describing the scene they were walking down. It was far too fast. He was never going to be able to take in that information. And then she just dumped him outside that metro, and he was probably lost for the rest of his life, never got home. I don't know. So that I found that a little bit frustrating. But no, generally, there's no like key bad points. There's nothing to look at it. There's no it's got a good pace to it. There's never really lulls and boring bits. I struggle to tally up the dreamlike element of it, and then the whole story was actually about some real feelings in the end, and I just struggled to tie them together a little bit. Yeah, another bad point that I found really frustrating was the love interest. I think he's called Nino, the guy that collects the photos. There was a couple of scenes when he was running, and it really annoyed me. The whole he wasn't just able to run down the street without managing to bump into people, and I just found it really frustrating. I know these seem really minor points, but it's just like just run down the stairs, lad. Just run down the stairs. You're trying to get somewhere. Stop bumping into people. Stop. Why have you ran through that crowd of priests? Why haven't you ran around them? And I just got frustrated by it. I don't know.
I love the fact in films that anyone that's running is always capable of running. You never get that person that's like, I need to run, and then 60 seconds later they're absolutely blown. You're like, oh, I do not go to the gym. I do not do any exercise. I am running for my life and I am incapable.
Yeah, and also the first time he was running, he was chasing someone, and there was never explored who that person was that he was chasing or why he was chasing them. He just chased them because they needed a means for him to drop his book so Amelie could find it or pick it up. Maybe I missed that. I don't know, but
there was a reason. I can't remember what it was, but there was a reason. I just can't think of what it was, but it made sense at the time why he was doing it. It was to. I just can't think of what it was, but there definitely was a reason. If my second watch, I'll send you a WhatsApp, Mitch, and tell you what he was chasing.
Second watch. Don't put yourself through
it. If anyone does watch it, leave it in the comments. Tell Mitchell why he was chasing that man and drop his foot. Mitchell, you ready to rate this thing?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. So we'll start with how much you enjoyed it.
I know I'm being negative, and I said I wasn't that excited about getting towards the end of it, but obviously I watched it all the way through, and it's got a nice ending. And
because you were obligated to, because you knew you were doing this.
Yeah, it was in my contract, Dan. No, I'm gonna give it a 6. It wasn't tear your eyes out bad. I just wasn't really sucked into it and desperate to see the end of it. That's all.
Cool. And I'm going to give it a 7.7. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than the kid. I'd watch it again. It's not in my, top 50 favorite films or anything like that. But if someone ever wanted to watch this, I'd be more than happy to stick it on. I would recommend Wine. Just wine always helps. But also, I just think watching a French film, just get involved. Get as involved as you can.
Was it French? Was it French wine? Or
the first bottle was Italian. The second one, no, the second one was Spanish. The second one was a Cabernet Sauvignon from Spain. I wasn't that bothered. So, what are you giving it on the Muckle scale? How good did you think this was?
Yeah, technical quality. I mean, it was obviously trying to do a lot of things that I picked up on as the uneducated viewer. The saturation of the way it was almost childlike in describing the characters. That was all meant to blend in, that you were kind of seeing it from Amelie's viewpoint stuff. So I can appreciate there was good points to it, but at the same time as those being good points, because I was meant to see them as a viewer, I found them really annoying. The saturation, I hated it. I'm sorry. So I'm again gonna give it a 6.
A 6, for goodness. Bloody peasant.
Individual opinion here, Dan.
Well, that's why I was splitting the Muckle scale from the Mitchell scale. Like, if saturation aids the point of the filmmaker to make a dreamlike quality, that is a good thing. Whether you found it annoying or not is how much you enjoyed the scales for.
That's a fair point. But I mean, all I'm going to say is, if you want to watch a film by this actress, then watch a quality film like The Da Vinci Code.
Watch a very average film. Lost my trail of thought. So I'm going to give it a 9. I'm going to go into why I think that more specifically in the spoiler review section after these ratings, for those that are going to stay along and watch. But yeah, I thought what the director was trying to achieve was done well, because he conveyed it to a half-drunk person who was just paying attention, basically. And I think, like I say, the film's about 2 hours long, and about an hour into it, I understood what was going on, despite being completely lost for the first 20-25 minutes. I was like, what on earth is happening? But it's not perfect, and it doesn't do everything right, and there are definitely certain aspects that aren't great to it, which is why it's not going to get a perfect score or anything. But I feel like the director was trying to tell a story about a particular thing. I feel like it was probably important to him, and I thought he conveyed the message that he was trying to convey and conveyed the lesson he was trying to convey absolutely perfectly. Get back onto this video afterwards, pick up where we are about to leave off, because we are now going to go into some spoilers. So, Mitchell, did you have any idea what you were saying that you didn't really get it, but did you have if you want to guess the thematics of this, do you sort of understand?
I'm at risk of looking very naive and potentially like an idiot here, but I guess maybe there was a theme of there's someone out there for everybody. I don't know.
What I'll say is, this is, look, let's be fair, this is my interpretation. The director could turn around and go, Daniel, you're an absolute idiot, what are you talking about? But in a French accent, not a Geordie accent. So this is just my interpretation. I'm not looking at anyone else's. Like I say, I felt like it was what he was trying to say relatively early on. And one thing before I sort of fully go into it is I liked the fact that he used the medium of a dream, you know, the saturation like we talked about earlier, etc., to discuss fear when usually nightmares are associated with fear. And I thought that was like a really good sort of paradox or juxtaposition to use, that, you know, this is all a happy, lovely, oversaturated dream, and he's actually teaching us the things that we would usually associate with nightmares. But ultimately, I felt this was a story about how total introversion cripples the human experience, in that, in a sense, it's not a case of don't be an introvert. It's not a case of extroverts are better than introverts. If you're a total extrovert, then you aren't going to have those quiet moments of reflection. And if you're a total introvert, then you're denying yourself what humans are sort of made to do, and that's communicate, to be a community based animal, essentially. And the director's really clever because he sets up so many things to show us so many characters that suffer from this, and how Amelie is the one that sort of breaks these chains. And it comes from this sense of urgency within yourself. There's the sense of urgency within a character. So you have the dad, first of all, who's wants to go traveling, says, oh, me and your mother always said we'd go traveling. And as soon as his wife dies, that all goes out the window and he lives a boring life. We learn more about the dad and how interesting he is in the first 5 minutes of the film than we do for the rest of the film. And he is in it, and he is responsible for some funny moments with the garden gnome and when the gnome goes around the world. And I found all that stuff like really funny. But he provides nothing else as a character. That's him done. He's too scared. He's too fearful. You have the woman downstairs who's scared to love again, who's scared to even love her ex-lover. Very confused until Amelie sets her free with the letter. We've got Mr. Crystal, who draws living people. He draws people living life to the fullest, but not just that. By his own admission, people that will be remembered forever, that will live forever. And yet he sacrifices his own life, doesn't go outside, doesn't do anything. And then in the cafe, you've got two separate things. So you've got, first of all, the man who's writing the novel about a man who can see into the future and is so scared by it that he decides to do nothing. Again, showing us how fear cripples us into doing nothing. And then we have the couple who sort of get it together through Amelie's meddling, but then through a lack of communication, through fear of, I think, of getting hurt, and especially the guy with the recorder, they end up messing everything up. They end up shouting at each other. This total lack of communication. We even have so many things that show off this idea of introversion, the dreamlike quality, the lack of wide shots, which show everything through one person's perspective. We've even got the guy constantly on his recorder showing that he values his own thoughts opposed to the thoughts of other people. And all of this imagery then comes together through the story of Amelie, where she is someone that, like we said earlier, was mollycoddled throughout life, is a total introvert. And the director shows us this with, you know, the fish that was desperate to commit suicide. And even the way that our mother's death was played as a joke. You've got the fact that the exposition at the beginning is all, this person likes this and this person likes that, which is like the most basic. You don't know these people, but that's how a person knows a stranger. Oh, this person likes this. You go on to, and that is how someone who is not close to people will always see people. In through Amelie's story of love, the idea is that her being someone's guardian angel shows her that lots of people go through the same sort of thing, show her the consequences of what will happen, which is nothingness. You don't live properly. And at the end, she's crippled by it. She needs to show who she is to the person that she feels like she's in love with. And she just, until the very last minute, struggles to do it. And she is miserable in those moments where she realizes what she wants, but she cannot bring herself to do it until she finally opens the door. And he comes back, but the opening of the door is purely metaphorical for that is her opening her mind and that's her opening herself up. And that doesn't mean she's going to become this crazy extrovert and start saying hello to everyone. But it's just an opening from seclusion, because she is, other than who she goes to work with, very secluded. She helps the man at the beginning, has to back some wine just to get through him speaking to her without her speaking back to him. It's all this story about trying to realize that fear stops us from living, and introversion can absolutely be a positive thing. And it is a love letter to introversion, because we do things that are so funny that through the mind of an introvert, we see things that are so charming and bohemian and romantic and all these incredible things, all these incredibly positive things. But ultimately, as you say, or as you said earlier, Mitchell, that reality was your issue for it, is that there is no reality within inside Amelie's mind until she opens up, and she can still have all those feelings, she can have all those thoughts, she can still have that wicked sense of humor, but she needs to engage with reality. And that's what I took primarily from the film, and the little things along the way. It was just so many original things. Nothing happened the way that I thought that it would have happened, despite the story for that second half of the film being outrageously conventional. Let's be honest. It's a girl falls in love with a boy, they do some quirky stuff, and they end up together.
I mean, I can understand now that you explain that, and I can see that theme running throughout, and it's a pretty compelling argument as the point of the film. I think I'm not someone that looks too deeply into the messages of films sometimes, and for me, that all those points and that what the director was trying to push to make theme work, it turned the characters into caricatures almost for me, and all those they were extenuated those behaviors too much. I mean, of course, no man's going to sit and record all his thoughts sat in the same seat in the same cafe every day. That woman with the dog wasn't just sitting at home thinking about these letters every day. Time would have moved on, and people don't get stuck in these situations of painting the same painting for 20 years. So these were all, I get the theme and the point he was trying to put across when you describe it, but at the same time, I couldn't chime with that message because none of those characters are realistic to life. So it's kind of like, well, can I take your point if you have to accentuate those character traits and behaviors so much to a point that it's not feasibly real anymore? I think that's my issue with it.
I thought you said earlier on, though, that you liked the characters.
I like the characters from an entertainment point of view, but in terms of you're saying it really puts a theme across and conveys this love letter to introversion and things like that. To me, if you're having to stress small behaviors and turn these characters into almost comedy figures, then to me, maybe that's not a love letter to introversion in the same respect. I don't know.
Yeah, with the caricature element to it, I agree that they became sort of totem poles. I think the Mr. Crystal had a little bit of character. Yeah, the grocer's son who becomes his cameraman had a little bit of character to him. I agree the two characters for the romance in the cafe, they were very much caricatures. But I think they were less introverts and more, they had other things going on. I think Amelie's the true introvert. And that's why we see everything through her quirky mind as such. I think obviously the guy with the recorder, he is going through a breakup, and people in breakups have extreme personalities sometimes. Maybe you don't get to see the best of a person in real life. The guy that's writing the novel, he's just been rejected for the millionth time. I'm sure he's not exactly feeling himself. The hypochondriac, well, how reliable is she? So I think the scenarios that they were in, I found them fairly believable. Like, I would believe that someone who just got dumped by the love of their life can stalk someone and record all their sort of paranoia into a dictaphone. But also, because this is properly from Amelie's point of view, and she doesn't know anyone, like, she doesn't engage with. But I do understand what you're saying, that because of that, you find it hard to maybe understand them. And a lot of films have multiple characters for us to attach to, whereas this puts all its eggs in Amelie's basket. And if you don't get, if you, like you said, fail to connect to Amelie, then I imagine this is an awful experience, because you're right, everyone else is a bit of a caricature or a joke, or is quite thinly veiled. I even think, to be fair, one of my big criticisms of it that probably knocked it down on the good scale from 10 to 9 is the love interest. We get more of his background in that quick likes and dislikes section of his life than what Amelie did. Amelie saw him, I think, and then obviously fell in love with these photographs, which I suppose is a reasonable thing to fall in love with, maybe. But I don't think long-lasting relationships are built on, I really enjoy your photography.
Yeah, but I think again that's where I would stray into the realms of where's the realism in that relationship. She doesn't know anything about him. You know, she's seen him collect some scraps from underneath a photo booth, and then she's found this book that he's dropped, and then she suddenly, you know, after leading him on a little breadcrumb trail, she suddenly decides she's in love with him, and this is the person that she, you know, needs to overcome her strength to speak to, because it's the love of her life. You know, no more than if she was watching any other person in the street, and that is it. And that's what I mean. The realness of the emotions doesn't come through to a point that I can feel anything for the character and the behavior that they're portraying at the end. And is it that much of a happy ending because you're like, well, they don't even know each other? I don't know.
Which is why it's just, like I said earlier, it's such a Bohemian romance, really. It is the thinnest and most fleeting of happy feelings. And that was my biggest letdown. Like, I thought he was sound, like he was a nice dude. Like, he looked like he was like a normal bloke. He wasn't.
How many blokes keep those photo albums, work in a sex shop, and on a Wednesday on a Wednesday work at the ghost train? I know a bloke here mows down the pub with blokes like that.
It's me. No, what I meant was, he's not like a hunk. He's not this Adonis that she's searching. He is a normal looking fella that has his own things going on, as, you know, quirky as they are. Yeah, I can't say I've ever met anyone quite like him in terms of his hobbies, but it's not like, oh, you know what, you've fallen in love with him because he's got a six-pack or he's chiseled. So, anything else to say on that, Mitch? Any other thoughts?
I think I've had my say.
Had your say, and it was enough. And I think I've definitely had my say. I think people are now falling asleep. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. That was our review of Amelie. We obviously had very contrasting thoughts. Let us know what you think in the comments. Is Mitch right? Am I right? Is it somewhere in the middle? Is Mitch an uneducated fool? Am I a pretentious git? Please don't be afraid to let us know. Give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and join us next time, where we'll be reviewing Snatch, which at least I've seen this one. See you then.